Hey everybody, this is Robert with NWIEducate.com, and today's guest is Mr. Lee Akeley. Mr. Akeley, thank you for joining us today.
Always a pleasure, sir.
Today I really want to get into key subjects that are important to America outside of the normal propaganda. When I say that the normal mainstream propaganda is, we haven't really heard anything about dealing with the key issues in America, dealing with the homeless, the hungry, the infrastructure, medical, education. All we're hearing about is he said, she said, high school kind of antics. So I want to get into subjects that actually matter.
Okay.
So let's talk about a subject that you and I engaged in a while back, and we talked a little bit about a few moments ago, which is in reference to low-income housing.
Okay.
So we were talking about low-income housing, and we specifically referenced a place in California, LA?
Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, but we also were referencing Massachusetts, or excuse me, was it New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and we also some segments in Maine, just to give some perspective on West Coast, East Coast. And so let's talk about it. You were telling me in reference to some low-income housing in Los Angeles, they were going to spend, or they are going to spend, 1 billion
Yes.
on low-income housing. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, the article that I read was talking about the problems with it. The voters had approved a 1.2 billion, that's billion with a B, housing project for approximately 27,000 homeless people in Los Angeles. And it has gone, they've started it. The problem is that there are cost overruns already, costs that they figured are higher than expected. It is a government project, so those things always happen. So what's going to come out with all the apartments and everything you want to do is, it's coming out, figuring out to build $600,000 per unit of housing.
So when I say per unit of housing, we're talking about per living space.
Yes, that's the cost.
You could buy a house.
Well, the average,
nice house for that. Here's a mansion for that kind of money.
Well, the average cost of a condo in Los Angeles is $526,000.
Holy simoleons! Note to self, don't move to Los Angeles.
That's the private. That's the private sector. The government's building it for $600,000 because of
course,
various things.
$800 for a toilet. $600 for a toilet seat.
And I don't know all the particulars on how many apartments and so forth, but that was the gist of the article, which I found extremely interesting. They were spending that much money to house homeless.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a side note of that would be, how many people are they going to draw into Los Angeles if they think they're going to get free housing?
Well, and I'm a big believer in pet and animal aid and everything else, but this reminds me very much of a subject matter that you and I had discussed a while ago. It wasn't that long ago, but it was about what's not named the group, but it was about an animal assistance group.
Yeah.
That's nationwide.
Yeah.
And we were talking about them raising hundreds of millions of dollars. That's
yes.
Not exaggerating, right? It's about hundreds of millions of dollars to help 1,400 animals.
1,434.
1,434 animals. Now, don't get me wrong, any animal helped is help, but we're talking about if you divide that.
The cost was $47,000 per animal.
$47,000 to assist one animal. The cost variables is kind of off kill, but it reminds me very much of this type of spending as when we're talking about low-income housing. Now, I was researching low-income housing and development and alternatives, and they were coming up with these little colonies where they were creating a one-bedroom unit for $8,000, and they have these units completed. They're prefabbed,
right?
And they could put 3 of these units on one truck, and then you bring it into a pre-existing trailer park, and each unit can be hooked up to one lot.
Yeah.
And they have the septic, and so it's highly cost effective. And then what they do is they have greenhouses, and then they bring some animals, and then they bring therapists into this community, and they help the people develop work skills, help them with their if they have any potential mental issues.
And correct me if I'm wrong,
but it's a much more cost-effective scenario.
But don't they also provide a communal garden of some sort?
100%. That's exactly what. Thank you. It's one, and I'm sorry I missed that because that's a very important part. It basically it teaches them how to become self-sufficient, and it also gives them therapy because they're working with animals, they're working with the agriculture, they're physically doing something, but they also have therapists coming in to assist them with any issues they may have. And with the housing being so cost effective and brand new, it's very durable, can withstand a Category 5 hurricane. These houses are much more cost effective.
Where do I sign up?
Well, that's what I mean, and they're actually self-sustaining themselves, so
Right.
which doesn't create a perpetual cost for the community
Well, when
and
you
the taxpayers.
and we've talked about this before, when you give something away to somebody,
Mhm.
which they basically were giving for nothing, they didn't do anything, it really has little value because you have nothing of yourself invested in it. However, if they have to work for it, even with a small amount, a small effort,
Mhm.
it has value at that point because you put some personal effort into it. And that's the problem with what we do today is we give everything away instead of asking something in return. We're not asking people. I don't think we should ask people to pay the $8,000 for the unit or the $600,000 for that. But they should be giving something back
Mhm.
because then it becomes value laden rather than just a
Well,
freebie.
And I can't agree with you more. To me, it's not only about the giving something back, but it's also by doing that, it's therapy in a lot of different ways because you start building confidence in your abilities. Because a lot of the problems that I've seen working with the homeless around here and doing interviews is that they when you get to that point, you lose confidence, you get depressed. In all of these different issues, by having this communal aspect, you get up every morning with a purpose. You get it for a reason. You're helping others. You're developing your own food. You're creating a situation where you're taking caring animals and you're helping your community survive, and it becomes a kind of a beautiful thing.
I come from Maine originally.
That explains everything.
Yes, it does. There's a city in Maine that here years ago decided to build low-income housing units, which they did, but they put it all in one section. And over the years, that section has become, it's a horrible section now. Crime is rampant in that section. The units are in great disrespect and disrepair. It just hasn't been maintained by people because, again, I think because when you give something,
Mm-hmm.
even at a lower price, you don't ask something in return, they don't value what they have.
You know, when you were describing that, the first thing that came to my mind is a dump, and I don't mean that in terms of. I mean, in terms of an analogy, you're just taking something instead of recycling it, instead of putting it, everything having its place, everything having its purpose. You're having one designated area and you throw everything in that area. So when people are having issues or they're having financial stress or distress, you throw them in this one area and then forget about them.
Yeah.
And that seems to me kind of what you're describing.
Well, what you've got is everybody's in the same boat, and you put them in this one similar area.
But there's no resolution, so you're putting all of that resource into something with no solution.
There's also no examples there of people who have been there and moved themselves beyond that through their own pulling up their own bootstraps, so to speak. It would have been much better to take those units instead of building them all in one area of the city, to disperse them among the neighborhoods in the city, so that they have contact with people who do go to work every day, who do have values and ethics, and basically see how the other side does and how they do it. Mm-hmm. It would be much better that way.
And it would give them incentive.
But one would hope that, yes.
Yeah, but I mean, instead of being completely inundated and surrounded into one mindset,
yeah.
You know, and isn't it interesting how we're in the, here we are into the next millennium. You know, everybody talks about how advanced we are, but yet we're still using the same mindset, the same concepts for dealing with poverty, for dealing with certain issues as we used 60, 70, 80 years ago.
It's easier to write a check than it is to actually get off your duff and do something.
You know, I can't agree with you more, but you just think that we're standing there on our pedestals preaching how enlightened we are, and yet we're using the same concepts as the better part of a century ago.
Sure.
Why? Why haven't we moved forward with this? Why haven't we become more engaged in the problem instead of continuously falling back on blaming the gun, blaming the car, blaming the spoon, blaming anything but ourselves for personal responsibility to resolve any issue,
Well,
whatever the issue might be.
I don't want to get into a deep political issue here because there are some issues.
Are you sure?
Yes. Yes, but what we've done is with all these social programs over the last 50 or 60 years, and actually goes back a little further than that, we have basically, as education's been dumbed down, we have dumbed down the whole welfare system to where we don't want to embarrass anybody. We don't want to put anybody out. We want to basically make sure we're trying to raise everybody up without really any regard to the long-lasting effects. We have people in third and fourth generation welfare now because that's what all they've known.
Mm-hmm.
They grew up with seeing their parents and their grandparents. This is the way it's done. That's the way I do it. So I don't know why the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. It doesn't work. So
why do you feel why does our leadership, the ones that everyone looks to solve these issues, and yet decades, half a century plus after the fact, after the initiation of these problems become proliferated, how are we still using the same mindset? But yeah, these are the people we look to for our solutions.
Because there's a disconnect.
Oh, it's a serious disconnect.
They do things that they think their intentions may be good, so they do things they think is going to be beneficial, but in reality, are they doing it 100% that, or is there a piece of that says, well, this is going to make me look a little better. This will help me at the next election. Instead of not worrying about what's happening in 2 years, take care of the problem now and fix it for now so we don't have this reoccurring problem. Mm-hmm. So I think they have a disconnect of what it is to be poor or to have that mindset. They see the poor sometimes as helpless, and they're not helpless. Mm-hmm. But they are when you start giving away programs.
Well, they're a captive voting audience.
Well, that's true too. You're going to vote. You're going to vote.
So why am I going to help you get out of the situation? Or as long as I keep you in there and give you the check, you're going to vote for me.
If I run on a platform and I want to cut the particular welfare or assistance program that's out there mm-hmm. and change it to something different, that's an unknown. That's a fear. They're not going to vote for me. Mm-hmm. They're going to go with what they know, which is give me the check.
And it seems as though we live in a day and age where society has, instead of going from, there's more of an expectation of deservingness. I deserve this welfare check every month, and I've actually heard people tell me this. People have actually said this to me. The government owes me my check.
Okay. And
I don't know what to say, so I look at them, smiled in bewilderment. Here it is, everybody. And then I walk away because I don't know how to confront this entitlement now. We went from being a program meant to temporarily assist to a program where people feel that they're entitled to it.
I don't have any
Wait a minute, you don't have the magic wand? I was told that you had the magic wand to resolve all the issues. Are you telling me now?
I'm not sure we'll ever resolve it until we get to a point where if we continue down the road, and I hate to use the term socialism because it's a misread word at times, but if we continue to assist programs by giving away, at some point the taxpayers are going to get a bill that they're not going to like, and they're finally going to rise up and revolt. And then the whole system comes apart because they're going to cut off programs and cut these people out of the whack, and then it becomes a free-for-all. Unfortunately, there's very little leadership out there today that is willing to try something different. It's easy to write that check than to do something. The other thing is, years ago, 50, 60 years ago, you had churches that were involved. You had communities that used to do a lot for their communities. They have all abdicated that to the federal government now. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, as we all know, the federal government is not the solution. Most of the time, it's the problem.
Well, I mean, because you have one central government that can't even get water to us within 5 days for Katrina. But, the problem that I'm seeing, not only the disconnect, is just that so many people are just so tired of trying to solve problems, they just put it off on the government
Mm.
because they have no solution to it and they think that it's just a cure-all. Let's just give it to the government. I don't want to deal with gun control. Let the government deal with it. I don't want to deal with, because gun control is going to be much more effective on a local level
Yes.
than it would ever
Well,
be on a government level.
Any program.
But everybody wants to deflect the responsibility
Yeah.
to the government as saying they know best, when really.
Well, if you look at the hierarchy, and you look around any program you look at, we have a local federal office to take care of the county level. Now the county now answers to the state level. The state then goes to the federal level, which is in Washington D.C.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm living in Spokane, Washington, and Washington D.C. is clear across the country, what does that bureaucrat in Washington D.C. know what Spokane needs? They don't. I would even say the county people don't even know what Spokane needs, but the people in Spokane know. So the money should be, instead of going to Washington and coming back, seesaw that, set up block grants to each town, and they spend it as they see fit. The people who need it will get it, and those who don't need it.
Mm-hmm. Well, holy macaroni, Mr. Akeley, you're making too much sense. So
I'm
stop
sorry.
it. I mean,
Forgive me.
Stop being so logical.
Well,
You know, my throat's tickling. It's being so logical. You know, the problem is that you could take that same logic on any level. You not only
yes,
from welfare, but you could take it from our educational system.
exactly.
You know, people in
Local control.
exactly, they know what the folkway and customs in Alaska are different than they are in Miami or Key West, and then same thing up in northern Maine is different than it is in Texas. But we should have standards, you know, A, B, C,
Right.
D, something like that. But allow each different segment of the country to teach it in their own ways.
And to use it to the best of their abilities.
That's
So,
right.
yeah.
I mean, but instead of trying to say one test cures all, which is obviously, as we've seen, is a miserable failure.
I really think sometimes though that it's the people in charge, be it me, whoever they are,
I don't even think they know.
do not seem to appreciate or think that a simple approach is best.
Mhm.
They tend to layer it and build in all kinds of things because they're trying to micromanage something which it doesn't respond to micromanaging. It just there's waste.
Mhm.
I'd like to know for every dollar that's spent on welfare, how much of that actually gets to where it belongs, how much gets lost in all the administrative costs.
What kind of fraud levels do we have?
Oh, I'm sure you hear about it all the time.
Mhm.
Not necessarily welfare, but you see. Look at the Medicare. They just nailed a guy for $72 million fraud.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not.
A doctor he just made up patients and billed, and they paid it. There's no oversight. They just kept paying him.
Wow, I did not know that. I didn't know that. But I mean, that's just another example of the absence of checks and balancing,
Yeah.
with the government spending our tax dollars.
A local, that probably wouldn't happen
Mm-hmm.
because everybody knows everybody.
That's right. That's right. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
You know, but what are we going to do?
Simple is best. You know,
Mhm.
the old
Smaller
Thank you.
government, smaller bureaucracy.
the old KISS method. Keep
Mhm.
it simple, stupid.
Mhm. I can't agree with you more. So, you know, in conclusion to the argument, I mean, smaller government is best, as we discussed. So the solutions could be handling key issues on your local level, contacting your local politicians,
Exactly.
taking, you know, an ever increasing interest in your local politics, your local happenings, your local events, because these are the things that can change what's around you. You know, it takes one brick to start a house, you know, or to start a foundation, and everybody wants to just pour the whole slab all at once, and stop with the bricks aspect. But really, you can't have a solid foundation unless you do one brick at a time. So start locally, you know, and then go to your county, and then go to your state, and then work on federal. But right now, everybody's just shooting to the federal, and then they're getting bogged down, and there's nothing ever effectively happening. Is that a fair assumption? A fair view?
Sure, it is. Part of the problem is too that I don't think people will get involved. They just like again, even people who I'm not talking about poor people. I'm talking about middle class, even wealthier people. It's easier to write that check than to get involved. I don't want to go down to a meeting. I'll read in the papers. I'll talk to somebody about what happened. Well, in a community of 20,000 people, when you got a school board meeting or a city council meeting and you only got 50 people show up.
And those 50 people are the ones that vote in because they're the only ones that showed up. It's kind of like our elections, you know what I mean? It's just the same concept as Mr. Akeley was saying. You know, you're the first, we all are, the individual is the first to complain about whatever doesn't go right, but when it actually comes to doing something about it or changing something about it, nobody shows. They don't have the time for that.
You know, every great journey starts with a single step.
Mm-hmm.
And to cure this problem, it should start with one person and build from there. Someone has to step forward and take the bull by the horns and say, this is what I think, and this is where I think of you, and gather steam with other people as joining him, and then move forward. It's not going to be solved overnight.
No. Well, we all want it to be. And, you know, there's a reason why everybody puts some things into a simple package. Not every solution is a number one with a Coke supersize me.
Yeah.
And so we have complicated problems, America. We have and it require complicated solutions, and it requires a lot of patience and thought to these solutions. So hopefully we invited you to think. Give us a call. Our contact information is right on this website, nwieducate.com. I look forward to hearing from each one of you. Mr. Akeley, thank you so very much.
Well, you're very welcome. It's always a pleasure.
All right, I appreciate it. You guys have a great day, and we look forward to hearing your feedback. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.